Hey, Erin, it's Kate. I'm showing up as Melissa. Can you change my name?
Yeah, I'm trying to, but it's not letting me rename anyone. Let me work on that.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, Kate, it looks like I'm still not able to rename people right now. So I don't know if you can change the name when you join the meeting, or if it gave you an option to change the name. But that would be one option until we can.
So I usually it gives me the option to rename and it's not letting me do that.
Yeah, I think it's a meeting setting.
I can do it.
You can do it? Okay, perfect. So I'm not sure. There are two, Kate, there's two Melissas. What I'm assuming is Anne.
That's
Yeah,
right.
All right. All right, so I'm Kate.
Kendra, I don't know if you can tell who is who, but if you can get that rename, that would be awesome.
Was that right?
Yes.
Yep.
Kate, what's your last name?
Dinsmore.
Can you spell that for me, please?
Sure, it's Dinsmore.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And then the other Melissa Metastasone is Ann Cossett.
Well, all right, I'm bringing it as 10:01 a.m. So I think I'd like to get this started. It's nice to see everybody's faces and names again after I was gone for some time doing COVID stuff with the health department, but I'm back on air. So we're gonna go ahead because this is a Zoom meeting, follow the protocols. I'm gonna start off with a welcome to the TTAC meeting here in July. All the meeting body members are attending from a remote location. We are holding this meeting virtually, so we'll be doing public comment a little differently than usual via live call-in phone line, just like calling into a radio show or to make a pledge during a telethon. I'll call for general public comment and on that item, and we'll take comments on items that are on the agenda and items that aren't on the agenda. I will also open the public comment phone lines on each agenda item. Each time we call for public comment, we'll put the numbers on the screen and the meeting ID and give some time for you to go to your phones and call in, but you may want to write them down. When you call in, you'll be placed in a waiting room and I will take calls in the order they come in. When I call on you, please mute your TV or computer or there will be an echo. Tell us your name and your comment. Please be aware there's a delay of about 50 seconds from what you're hearing at home and the actual meeting. So it's okay to begin speaking right away when I call on you. I'll be observing a speaking limit of 3 minutes so we can hear from everyone. And let's get started. I'm gonna call the meeting of TTAC to order. We're going to start with a roll call and just to try to simplify things, I'm going to call your names and please indicate you're here when I call you. Shane Stack. You can unmute yourself, please. I saw you come in.
Present, you didn't hear me.
Ah, there it is. Thanks, Shane. So I'm Sarah Cofield from the Health Department. Corey Aldridge from MUTD.
I'm here.
All right. Dory Brownlow with Missoula County. Ellen Buchanan with MRA.
Present.
Don Veru, City Development Services. Jacqueline Smith, MDT.
Here.
Chet Krauser, Missoula CAPS.
Karen Hughes for Chet Krauser.
Who is that?
Karen Hughes.
Karen Hughes. Thank you so much. Juniper Davis with Parks and Trails.
John Stegmeyer is trying to get into this meeting to sit in for Juniper. He may not be allowed in.
Let's see. Does anybody see him in the waiting room?
No.
Okay. Hopefully he can get that link and we see him soon. Donna Gockler from City Parks and Rec.
This is Neil Miner filling in for Donna Gockler.
Thanks, Neil. Lynn Hilligard, MRT-EMA.
Here.
Jeremy Keene from Public Works is not here. Does he have a proxy? All right. Carol Stridgets. I think I murdered that last name. I apologize. MDT Helena.
This is Vicky Surdich sitting in for Carol.
Thank you so much. And Ben Weiss, City Bike and Ped.
Here.
All right, thank you so much. I'm going to now call for an approval of the minutes. Can I get a motion on the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
All right, can I get a second?
I'll second the motion.
All right, any discussion? All right, seeing none. I guess, Aaron, this is a procedure point question. Do we go to public comment on the minutes approval?
I don't see anyone in the waiting room, so I think we can take a quick minute or just have that be part of the comments, otherwise not on the agenda.
Okay. Well, let's move forward then and have a vote on the minutes. Can I get a voice vote of all approve?
Aye.
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 Hi.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? And any abstain? Same sign? All right, motion carries. Thank you so much. So at this point, we're going to go to the full-on public comment section. We're on the agenda item for public comment on just a generic public comment. If you'd like to comment right now, we're going to open the phone lines and we'll take comment, and there isn't a staff report to go with this. I apologize for reading the script. The meeting admin is putting the call-in numbers on the screen. I'm going to read some of them for people who may have vision difficulties. 1-267-831-0333 or 1-888-475-4499. The meeting ID is 960-049-3694. We'll answer calls in order received. And I will call on you by your phone number. Please be sure to mute your TV or computer and tell us your name was on your mind. We'll be observing a speaking limit of 3 minutes. I'd be sure to mute your TV or computer when you're speaking to avoid an echo. So we're going to sit for just a minute to see if there's anybody who has a public comment for us. All right. Do we have anybody in the waiting room?
Nope.
Okay. Well, and I think we can probably move on to our next agenda item. And that is going to be our old business review, the draft fiscal year 2021 Unified Planning Work Program. Aaron, take it away.
Yeah, thanks. I am going to share my screen. Got kind of a quick presentation to go through, and then we'll have a little bit of time for discussion, I think. So this is pretty standard recurring administrative task for the MPO and for this committee. It's time to do our Unified Planning Work Program for our fiscal year 2021. We're coming up on the deadline for getting that in. New fiscal year starts October 1st for the federal fiscal year. And so our goal is to typically have the UPWP adopted and a tip if we're doing a new tip by August, so that we can have it reviewed by MDT and FHWA in September and have all of those documents approved by the time we get into the fiscal year at the start of October. So this is really kind of a first check-in on the UPWP. We'll have the final draft that we'll bring back to you next month in August for adoption. So this is where we can sort of talk through what the plan is for the next year and get some feedback on how we can invest our planning funds, the PL dollars, what staff is going to be working on, and what some ongoing and new projects might be. So just as a quick reminder for everyone on the committee, if you haven't been around for a UPWP, this is the MPO's staff work plan for the year. So this is how all of us who work, myself, Dave, John, and Tara, are going to spend our time over the next year. So it kind of outlines where our hours are going to be spent and the work that we'll be doing. It also determines how we spend our federal PL dollars. So what planning projects we're going to do or other eligible expenses that we can put those funds towards. And we do this every year. So it's our work plan for October 1 through September 30th. So that's kind of a general overview of what the UPWP is. You can find the current fiscal year's UPWP on our website if you want to go through and review sort of what we have this year. And we'll be revising that and we'll bring the full draft in August for review. So this is really just to look at, what money we have available, what projects we have going on, and what will be sort of that general work plan for the year. So I wanted to give kind of a quick update on what we have in our current fiscal year and what we're working on right now, just to give a sense of the kind of projects that we'll have going on. Some of these will continue into the next fiscal year, but others we're trying to wrap up before then. So right now we have Missoula Connect, which is our long range plan update. Everyone should be aware of that one, as we're giving pretty regular updates to all of you. That will definitely continue into the next fiscal year. We're not anticipating having that completed until probably March or early April. We have our travel demand model that we've been working on updating for in conjunction with the long range plan update. That work is not totally complete, but we have the model updated and it's ready to go for the analysis that we'll do as part of the long range transportation plan. So that may bleed a little bit into the next fiscal year, but most of it's completed at this point. We also have we've been working on a pavement condition assessment. That is pretty close to done. We have the draft report that we're reviewing kind of at a staff level. And so hopefully next month we can bring an update on that and have a kind of finalized report for everyone to review. We also have our East Missoula Highway 200 corridor plan. We have an update on that today, so you'll see where we're at. That is also going to bleed into the next fiscal year. We're hoping to wrap it up by the end of the year or early in January. We've been working on a Reserve Street community input project. We had hoped initially to have that wrapped up in April or May, but COVID, much like a lot of other projects, sort of put a wrench in those plans, and we've been kind of regrouping and now continuing those activities. But the goal is to have that project finalized before the end of this fiscal year. So we'll have that wrapped up. We also contributed PL funds to the Mullen Area Master Plan, and that project we expect to be largely wrapped up by early fall. And then we do some other ongoing data collection, like our bike ped counts, traffic counts, other things that we use PL funds to help with that. That's kind of a general overview. Last year, we had programmed about $1.2 million in PL funds that we spent between staff, administrative pieces, and all of these planning projects. So trying to, if you remember last year, we were unsure of whether a rescission was going to happen and whether we would lose PL funds if we didn't spend them. And so we were trying to spend as much of that as possible. Hence the large number of projects that we've been working on. We don't have that risk this year. So as I go through this, you'll see that there's probably an incentive to keep some of those funds in reserve, or we don't have to spend everything available this year, which is nice because I think the amount of work we've been doing over the last year is a lot, and it might be nice to have a year that's not quite as busy. So for FY21, the next federal fiscal year, we do have our allocation letter from MDT. And so to break that down, we have our annual allocation of PL funds for FY21 is just a little over $700,000. We also have unobligated funds. So that was what we had listed in reserve last year of about a little over $300,000. And then the corrections and releases from previous fiscal years. So in FY19, there was $632,000 that we had budgeted for various planning projects that we didn't spend all of. So that includes, we had started planning to do the East Missoula Highway 200, but we didn't get that project underway until later in the fiscal year. The pavement condition took a little bit longer to get started. So all of those projects that we had budgeted for in FY19 but didn't end up spending those dollars, we now have that release. So that's about $630,000. And then there are some minor corrections for FY20 that reduced the PL allocation by a little over $3,000. And then every year, the MPO has authorized MDT to use 13.42% of our available PL funds for statewide planning. What part of the reason for that is MDT, they match all of our federal dollars for PL. So there's no required local match from the city or county for those funds. And so this helps get some more of that money back into statewide planning. So that would be about $80,000 out of this that would go back into the statewide planning. So what that leaves us with is about a little over $1.5 million in available PL funds that we can have to, again, pay for personnel costs and administrative costs, but also to program into new planning projects. So about the same amount. I think last year we had about 1.6 or $1.9 million available. So we're in the same ballpark with money to spend. So something to consider as we go into a discussion of what projects to do is looking into the next couple of years and what's coming up that might affect the MPO. One is that there are potentially new MPOs coming online in Montana based on what comes out of the census. There are kind of two that we think are potential. There may also be so outside chance of a third MPO in the Kalispell area, but I don't know that that's as likely as the other two. So Bozeman, based on their growth and where they're at, I think everyone is expecting Bozeman to be hit that 50,000 population that would require an MPO. Helena, depending on how that urbanized area is drawn, may also be designated as an MPO, and what that means. Having additional MPOs in Montana doesn't mean the state gets any additional planning funds. We may if our population's growing faster than the rest of the country, but it's likely to impact how much we have available because that pot of PL funds now has to be split amongst more MPOs. And so that could have a reduction in our annual allocation by as much as 20 to 30%. It's hard to know exactly what that number will be, but sort of bottom line is we need to be thinking ahead that we will have less money coming in to fund planning once those MPOs come online. And it takes a couple of years after the census, so we're not anticipating that happening until maybe 2023 or 2024 maybe, but something to keep in mind. So there's an incentive, I think, to have some reserve so we can pay for future planning studies or help buffer against those first few years of new MPOs and adjusting to a new annual allocation. But the caveat is statewide, we can only hold PL funds in reserve for, I think up to 3 years before they start to lapse. And Vicky, maybe you can jump in and correct me if I'm wrong on those years, but generally, the feds don't want money to be sitting in an account unspent for too long. So there's some flexibility statewide. Those funds are looked at. So MDT can shift around what funds are being spent in different MPOs or using the oldest PL funds first. So that 3 years may not be a hard and fast rule, but we don't want to keep money in the bank for too long. So with that, I've tried to put together a quick summary of where we're at with just our administrative personnel costs and contracts that we know are going to continue into FY21. And all of that, and then if you take all of that plus the FTA funds that are allocated through the MPO to Mountain Line that are used for their planning and administrative costs, which is about $230,000 this year. All of that gets us to about $1 million and would have a reserve of $750,000. So that's kind of my initial estimate of what we would have available to spend on other planning projects besides what we already have going. So there's a fair amount of reserve. It's quite a bit of money and gives us some flexibility in trying to think about what transportation planning needs we have coming up. So with that, we didn't get a chance. I had hoped last month to have an initial conversation to just think about what our project needs are and what we might want to fund. We didn't get a chance to do that. The meeting went a little bit long, but I have had some conversations with city and county staff just to get a sense of what's coming up in the next year or so and what we might want to consider partnering on as an MPO. Plus, there are other projects, other plans. The downtown master plan had some recommendations on projects that should move forward, and there will likely be a planning component to that. There may be something that comes out of our Reserve Street community input project that tells us we should do some continued planning related to Reserve, and obviously we'd want to partner with MDT on anything there. But with that, I think I'll go over sort of the conversations I've had and where I think there may be some opportunities for continued work over the next year. The first related to MPO work. There's been a lot of changes going on around TDM and some recommendations. So anyone who is involved in the downtown master plan knows that there were a lot of conversations around how we can better integrate transportation demand management into our parking or regulatory environment. And so I think there's some real opportunity there to do some more work in thinking about TDM. I also attached a memo that we got from some initial programmatic recommendations from Nelson Nygaard, and we can talk about that more as part of the long range plan update. But we're in this process of identifying new projects. Part of that is programmatic. And I think there were some good recommendations there from Nelson Nygaard about things that we should consider continuing and looking at. And one of those is really integrating our TDM and thinking about not just the programs that we have, but the regulatory environment. You know, how can we start to think about development and integrating TDM into our development review? And again, some of that comes out of the downtown master plan and this need to just think more comprehensively about how parking and transportation and development are related and how we're reviewing all of that. And I think, you know, we've got a good start on some of that, but to have some assistance to come in and help us really evaluate where we're at as a community, what we're ready for, what do we have already, what are the opportunities for, you know, incentivizing, including TDM in our development process. We've also done a lot of work on greenways and local streets as transportation. I think there's opportunities there to continue that and make sure that we're moving those forward with implementation, not just in the infrastructure piece, but also thinking about the promotion and signage and working with neighborhoods to continue to implement those local streets that are or slow streets. And then there may be some other programmatic development. There were some interesting recommendations from Nelson Nygaard related to doing some public-private partnerships around mobility programming. And so that might be another opportunity to investigate and have the MPO take a role in facilitating those conversations. For Missoula County, and this is just kind of an initial list based on conversations I've had with staff, so we can have more conversation today to think about what might be the MPO's priority. But there's potentially some countywide trails planning, and we know that with trails there is a strong transportation component, particularly with those regional commuter trails. So there might be an opportunity to think about how a countywide trails planning integrates with the MPO's transportation work, and take a closer look. We've done some of that work in our infrastructure plans, like the PED plan and the bicycle facilities master plan, but we've always sort of trails are a part of that, but we haven't looked specifically at how all of those trail networks, what a complete network would look like. So that's an opportunity. The Y area, you know, there's potential for growth out in that area. There's already, you know, the ongoing development activity out there, but we've never taken a really close look at the infrastructure, particularly the transportation connectivity in that area. So it'd be similar to what we've done in the Mullen area master plan, maybe, where we're looking at sort of what is the circulation out there, what are the transportation needs, if there is going to be continued development there, what do we need to plan for, and having that in place ahead of the growth, so we're not responding to individual development projects. There may also be an opportunity for some neighborhood level planning in the urbanized area outside of the city. So thinking about, you know, Bonner, West Riverside, we hear a lot from that neighborhood about pedestrian and sidewalk connectivity and how that might look. And we started to address it in the pedestrian facilities master plan, but I think we could dive a little bit deeper and look at, you know, do some work around what are the right kinds of pedestrian facilities, do some work around alternatives to sidewalks, or just other creative ways to make better pedestrian connections in some of these sort of peripheral communities to the city of Missoula. And then passenger rail, the Commissioner Strohmeyer has been doing a ton of work around passenger rail, and there's likely a role at some level for the MPO to help partner and think about how that works. Obviously not for the full regional rail, but as a partner in that process. At the city level, there's a couple of projects that are kind of on my radar and others. One is thinking about Higgins, the hip strip portion of Higgins. We know we have the bridge is going under construction in October. It's going to create really good bike ped facilities over the bridge. But then in the hip strip portion, a lot of that drops off. And so that was a big piece of the downtown master plan, is thinking about how do we encourage safe multimodal travel through that corridor. And there was no one recommended this is the solution to that. And so there needs to be a planning process to identify what that is, like what is the right level of improvement for that corridor? How do we do it? How do we maintain good flow of people through there and make it safer? So that's one potential project that we could partner with the city and others on. The North Reserve Scott Street area, urban renewal district, there's a lot of activity going on in that, whether it's development along Scott Street or other parts. And so doing some more targeted infrastructure planning, and there would likely be a transportation component to that, of what is the connectivity in street network. And then again, coming out of the downtown master plan around the front main conversion, there's I think some more work that could be done engaging in the Kiwanis neighborhood. And this is something that we partner with the MRA and the downtown partnership to look at how the Kiwanis neighborhood in particular, kind of south of Front Street and over by the library, and that residential neighborhood that has some access constraints. And I think those need to be addressed before the front main conversion can move forward. So that's a potential project where we could partner. And then the last one is doing some fiscal growth analysis. The city, and I think hopefully we can include the county in some of this, but just looking at doing some analysis about how we grow and what are the fiscal impacts of that. And there's a lot of good models on how that can be done, whether it's Urban 3 or I don't know, plenty of other people doing that kind of analysis. And what it would do is give us an idea of what are the costs of different types of growth patterns in terms of long-term transportation costs. And so we might be interested at an MPO level to help fund that kind of analysis, to give us a sense of what does our growth pattern mean in terms of future costs. So those are just some ideas that are floating out there. I don't know that we could do all of those in the next year, but we might start thinking about what are the priorities moving forward, and how much funding do we want to commit to those. So the next steps are to refine those potential planning projects. We're working on updating our personnel and administrative costs. I think we have that largely in place, but some of that will come out of the city budget process. We need to review our existing contracts and just see what we're going to have left in the next fiscal year. And then we'll have our final UPWP adopted in August and then approved by MDT and FHWA in September. So that was a lot of me talking. That's where so I think what I'm looking for from this committee is just some feedback on what should be our priorities be as an MPO in terms of our work over the next year, knowing that we're going to have a number of projects that we're trying to wrap up by January to March, and so it's largely going to be in the second half of the fiscal year that we get these things started, but want to be thinking ahead. So yeah, happy to hear some thoughts on what we have coming up.
All right. Thank you so much, Aaron. That was a lot.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you bringing it to us for a chance to give some feedback. Do we have anybody who has questions or comments for Aaron?
Shane, I guess I have a question for Aaron. And your last statement is, do we have any comments about what you should be working on? And I know you sent an email out earlier about maybe how we should be spending the PL funds. Is that kind of the thing you're looking for?
Yeah, I think it's how do we spend PL funds, and are there other ways that the MPO can partner, not necessarily through spending dollars, but just providing some staff capacity or partnering on planning projects. So I guess it would be both of those pieces.
Okay, so I had a conversation with Juniper, and I don't know if John was ever able to get on the call. But one of the things that Juniper and I talked about is as far as planning goes and the use of the PL funds is, the county does not have like a trails plan. And I know Juniper had talked about trying to put some of that together, and I don't want to speak for her, but at some point it might be good to just have a conversation about how can we utilize those funds for the county to put together more of a long-term plan on the trails that are in the county and where we want to expand as far as trails and things like that. So we're right now working with PTOL, and we're at Public Works, we're going to take over maintenance of the trails that are in the county. So we have kind of that maintenance component, but PTOL still do the kind of the planning piece. So we're definitely partnering on it, but I want to respect Juniper's thoughts, so I don't want to speak for her too much. So hopefully she'll get a hold of you and provide some thoughts on that.
Yeah, and I did have a conversation with some county staff, and John was on that call. I guess that was Tuesday. And one of the things we did talk about was the need to do a countywide trails plan. And I think, I guess I would see from the MPO side, our focus would be on the urbanized area, but how we connect out to those county trails is really important. And the maintenance piece of it, we should really be thinking about in all of the plans that we do, and thinking more closely about maintenance, and trails might be part of that. So yeah, good point.
So this is Ellen. I think that's a great idea. Has anybody looked at what kind of cost might be associated with putting together a plan of that nature?
This is Neil. I see John on too. I saw him take his mute off, but we've started the process for what we're calling our PROST plan, Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and Trails, the T. And that would be roughly about the same as the MPO. I think our planning areas are about the same. We've done the open space chapter so far. We've done that largely in-house at this point, but working with the PTOL staff. Our last master plan, the Parks master plan, was 2004. So a lot's changed since then. So I think we just need to update that and continue to work for it. And I like the idea of working as a team, because there is a huge transportation component in the trail component of that plan. So.
All right, I saw that Ben had his hand raised, and Dory is also waiting to comment. So Ben, can you take it away?
Yeah, thanks. Aaron, as you know, we're working on prioritizing or developing a scoring rubric for the city's CIP, and some of those projects are going to need planning. They're not all at the ready to fund construction stage. And so I guess I'm just curious, is there a process to solidify what those potential planning projects are this year? And can we take the time for it to work out the city CIP list? And if we identify several projects that might need planning, can we think about adding those to the list?
Yeah, I think so. Because ideally we have some of that ironed out between now and the end of August. So there is a little bit of time to do that, or to get more projects in the queue, and then come back in August and really solidify what it is the MPO wants to help fund. Ideally, they're more regional type projects, I think, is the most appropriate for the MPO to fund. But I think there's a role in planning funds, depending on how this committee and TPCC wants to spend our available PL dollars. So yeah, I think, if you can get me the list of those projects, and we can talk about how it fits into the overall work plan, or what's expected or what's being asked of the MPO, if that makes sense. And then, we can always amend the UPWP later if if projects come up in, later in the year or early next year that we hadn't considered, but there's an opportunity to help fund those, I think we can do that. But again, I think we all need to be, ideally we have that full list of projects and things that we could fund, so we can look at what does that cost versus what do we want to try to keep in reserve to do bigger planning projects over the next 3 to 4 years, or once there are new MPOs and we're getting potentially a lot less funding, how do we continue to do those bigger regional projects with less money?
All right, thank you. Dory, did you want to ask a question or have a comment?
I don't think we can hear you yet, Dory. Sorry. Yep, still
It's not-
can't.
Yeah, we still can't hear you, Dory, and it's not showing you as muted.
We can come if you can get your audio working, we can come back to you maybe, Dory. Or you can type it in the chat and we can read that off too.
While Dory is typing, was there anybody else who had a comment or question on the work plan presented by Aaron?
So this is Ellen. I don't seem to have a raise your hand icon on my Zoom, but then there are lots of things missing on my computer. So I would say that on the North Reserve Scott Street suggestion in Aaron's list, that there are some things in play that could take place pretty quickly. And I don't think it's going to, if things fall into place, we won't be next year or, toward the end of next year before we're actually moving forward with some of those planning efforts with respect to infrastructure and mobility.
Neil?
Yeah, I also just like the South Higgins, there's a lot of existing residents and draws down on the southeast end of town that kind of are isolated from the rest of town, kind of creating barriers between Brooks and Higgins, kind of the hip strip area. So I really like that connectivity coming from where the Brooks peel off is to what will be the new bridge. I really like that idea as a project moving forward too.
Great. And then I would say, I mentioned this at a earlier meeting with the LRTP. I would advocate for the North Scott Street, North Reserve area projects just because of the amount of housing that's planning on being placed at the end of Scott Street over the next coming years, especially the very large low-income housing project and the additional homes that are projected, and I think even apartments near the Scott Street Village. So I think that the more we can do to help the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that are going to be putting up at the end of Scott Street have good transportation options, I think that would be really beneficial to the community.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the lack of connectivity in that area, Scott Street's it. And so we really do need to look at how we create other pieces of infrastructure. We not only have Villaggio, which is 200 low-income housing units that have been approved at this point. We've got the potential of the city buying the Scott Street properties, land, which would give us almost 10 acres to redevelop. We've got still a multifamily piece to Scott Street Village that Dave Edgell has not developed yet. Yeah, good point, Sarah. We have a lot of potential traffic that's going to be turned on to Scott Street that we need to pay attention to, because we need the housing, but we need to get people in and out of there safely as well.
Absolutely. John Stigmeyer, I see your hands up.
Hi, John with Missoula County Parks, Trails, Open Lands. Aaron, could you give us a little bit more of a sense on how to proceed if, you know, we want the committee to review a project or we want to advocate for a project, what we would need to provide and the timeline for that?
Yeah, I think the two biggest pieces are, one, what's the general scope of the work to make sure that that it's eligible for PL funds. So, you know, we can't do engineering design, but we can do planning level design. And then what the cost is and what proportion of that would be relevant to the MPO. So thinking about a countywide trails plan, you know, how much of that is within the MPO's planning area, and how much of it is transportation versus recreation. So getting a sense of what would be the eligible costs of a project that the MPO could contribute to. And then ultimately what you're asking for us to contribute. And then having that by August would be ideal, sort of early August would be ideal. So we can get it included in the draft UPWP that we then bring to TTAC, and we can sort of see that full picture of what are we funding and what do we have available.
Thanks.
Yep.
I'm going to read Dory's comment. She has two comments on the county list. First, the county is proceeding in planning for a TEDD at the Y. She says she'll be in touch with Aaron on how to include TTAC. Second, the Board of County Commissioners just set a hearing date on the joint resolution on the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority for July 30.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so Dory, yeah, we'll touch base in the next week or two and get a sense of what role the MPO can play in that area. And then, yeah, passenger rail, I think we'll likely get some more feedback from the commissioners at TPCC, but we'll look at ways that we can include that.
All right, thank you so much. If there isn't any further comment from the committee, we'll open it up really quick for some public comment, and then we'll move on to our next meeting agenda item. Anyway, so would like to comment on the current item of the work plan. We're going to open the phone lines. We'll take comment. Our meeting admin will put the call-in numbers on the screen now. I'm going to read them again for anybody with vision difficulties. 1-267-831-0333 or 1-888-475-4499. The meeting ID is 960-049-3694. I'll answer calls in the order received, and I'll call on you by your phone number. So please be sure to mute your TV or computer. Tell us your name and what is on your mind. Please be sure to mute your TV or computer when you're speaking to avoid an echo. So now we will wait.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anyone calling in yet, so.
All right, then let's move on to our next agenda item, which is our new business from Kate Dinsmore with WGM, a presentation on East Missoula and Highway 200 corridor design alternatives. Do we have Kate on? Yep, there she is. And Kate, are you able to share your screen and launch a presentation?
I am. I think Tara's gonna start off with a quick introduction though first.
Great, thank you.
Yep. So Tara Ossendorf with the MPO. I'm one of their transportation planners. Just kind of wanted to give everyone a quick update from the last time we talked to you. I believe right before COVID, probably, we brought our technical analysis forward to this committee. So just kind of wanted to give a little update where we're at. We actually just completed our draft designs and they went out live yesterday onto our website. So All those are available to the public online. There's also quite a few different ways for public comment and public review, which Kate will address a little bit more. Since we last spoke, we've also worked with our resource agency, kind of on the environmental side of the project. We've had quite a few conversations with different focus groups, including business owners along Highway 200. We've worked with our technical advisory committee, which I feel like a lot of you are actually a part of, so you may be familiar with this process, so excuse us if we're repeating. And then we've also sent a number of individual letters, had quite a few phone calls with landowners that the designs may be impacting certain pieces of property. So right now we've got some postcards out, just kind of letting everyone know about the design release and the opportunity for online comment. And then we also have an open house coming up next Wednesday. It's going to be an an outdoor open house at Mount Jumbo Elementary School. It'll be Wednesday, July 8th from 5:30 to 7:30. That'll all be outside. Staff will all have face coverings. Anyone who decides to attend, please consider wearing a face covering as well. We'll have lots of hand sanitizer, 6 feet apart, opportunities to comment and ask questions from staff, but we do want to let everyone know that everything that we'll have at that meeting will also be 100% online. So only come if you're healthy and only come if you're comfortable in that setting. And with that, I'll actually just pass it on over to Kate and we'll get going on the design alternatives because I know we're a little crunched for time right now.
All right, sounds good. So let me share my screen. So like Tara mentioned, we just kind of updated our website and have a lot of information online. So I'm actually going to use our website to present today. And if you're interested in following or kind of controlling the website, you're welcome to go to the MPO website. Under participate, you can go to the East Missoula Highway 200 corridor plan. And then if you scroll to the bottom, I'm going to be working with the view and comment on designs. All the background information has been put up, so it's all available to everyone online. Then we have this, it's called Social Pinpoint. It's kind of this interactive piece of the public involvement to allow people to answer surveys and leave comments online. We've really tried to make this a robust online public involvement process with the current conditions we're under. So just kind of as a reminder, there are 3 segments to this corridor: East Broadway, East Missoula, and the Chevron to Marshall on the east end of the corridor. So basically, after we did the technical analysis and really established an understanding of the issues within the corridor, we put together 3 corridor-wide alternatives providing infrastructure updates from Van Buren, from Van Buren on the west end of the corridor through East Missoula and extending to Tamarack Road on the east end. So we identified 4 focus areas. These areas were specific areas of concern, and so we developed more detailed options for these. So the 4 focus areas are the Van Buren access management, the railroad crossing and I-90 interchanges, the East Missoula access management, and the Chevron parking improvements. So the 3 corridor-wide alternatives provide a high-level look at potential future improvements. And the idea is that we'll be kind of mixing and matching elements from the 3 alternatives and the 4 key focus areas in development of the preferred alternative. So the first corridor-wide alternative is alternative A. This alternative incorporates many elements typically found in a complete street, including sidewalks, landscape boulevards, raised cycle tracks, and on-street bike lanes. And this one really provides the most opportunity for landscape and aesthetic improvements. So we've included typical sections for each segment. So for the first segment, the East Broadway segment, this one includes a sidewalk on the south side with a boulevard. The north side, we are not including a sidewalk with this option, but we have on-street bike lanes. For the East Missoula segment, we have sidewalks on both sides of the street, boulevards, and a raised cycle track. We have the option of removing a boulevard in certain specific areas to allow for parking as well. And then in the Shawron to Marshall segment, we're showing a shared use path that connects East Missoula to Shawron on the south side of the road, and then we switch to the north side of the street or of the highway with the trail. We did that for allowing some better access to existing residences, and then to also address the construction feasibility issues where there's limited space between the river and the hillside. Parking, we've allowed for parking kind of in specific areas. We're trying to be strategic about where that's located and needed in this alternative. So really addressing the parking is along Broadway and the multifamily housing, and then where businesses are located and it's needed in East Missoula. There's some issues with the existing parking in East Missoula. A lot of it actually uses part of the right of way. And so as these improvements come on board, they're going to be basically losing parking. And so we need to find a way to still provide parking for those businesses. So for alternative B, this one really focuses on a shared use path. Really two connections, one from Van Buren to Easy Street on the south side of Highway 200, and a second connection from Van Buren on the north side of the interstate through East Missoula and all the way to Tamarack. And this would be on the north side of the highway throughout. So it's consistently on that same side. There's no crossings for this one. I'm going to talk about the kind of the trail connection along Mount Jumbo in a minute with the focus area. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail with that right now. But basically, typical section through the east-west segment, shared use path on the south side with the boulevard. Again, we don't have any pedestrian improvements on the north side, but we still have an on-street bike lane. Through East Missoula, shared use path on the north side, and a sidewalk on the south side, providing access to businesses and residences on the south side with boulevards. And then the Shawron segment is the same as the previous alternative with a shared use path on the north side. And then moving on to alternative C, this one focuses on maximizing parking and providing sidewalks. So minimizing kind of the landscaping and boulevards, which allows to create that space for parallel parking on both sides of the street. This option is the only one that has a sidewalk on the north side all the way from Van Buren to Easy Street. And we've done that because we're showing additional parking lane on the north side, looking at adding even more parking for this area, and then having that pedestrian connection with the parking. And then through East Missoula, this is kind of continues a very similar typical section, parking on both sides of the street, sidewalk. It is possible that we could, in certain areas, interchange the parking lot with boulevards to allow or to incorporate some of that landscaping through that area. And then for this alternative, we're showing a shared use path connecting East Missoula to Shawron and then to Old Marshall Grade. And we're ending it at Old Marshall Grade. This one is on the south side of the highway. We're kind of looking for feedback here, trying to figure out if this connection from Old Marshall Grade to Tamarack, it's a challenging from a construct standpoint. And so we want to make sure that it's something that people are really interested in, and we're looking for some feedback on that. And so we've got a survey online for people to leave their comments. And if you guys are checking this out, let us know if there's anything that isn't working for you. We just launched it this week. And so we're happy to incorporate changes if we need to. So now I'm going to jump into the 4 focus areas. So this one has an interactive map to check out more detail on each focus area. The first one is the Van Buren focus area. So this area has safety issues which are stemming from merging and expanding driving lanes associated with the Van Buren intersection and access to businesses. So what we're proposing is to extend the median to the east through here with a left turn lane, which would provide access to the Green Hangar and the Kingfisher Fly Shop, and then changing the access to Diamond Jim's Casino and Lewis and Clark Trail Adventures to a right in, right out access lane. We've also kind of looked at some typical sections through this area. One of the changes could be removing the left turn lane, but with whatever kind of typical section we go with, it still allows us to extend the median and add that left turn lane, which is really the key piece of the access management. We're also, like I said, we've looked at a lot of typical sections through here, but what we really want from the public as far as their input is just trying to understand what are their priorities, what are their preferences for bicycle amenities and pedestrian amenities. So we're asking them what options they like for bikes. In this area, the options are an on-street bike lane or a shared use path. And then for the pedestrian amenities, looking at a boulevard sidewalk, curbside sidewalk, or a shared use path, and then allowing them to fill out the survey and comment that way. And once we get those, understand those preferences better, we'll turn that into a typical section that'll become part of the preferred alternative for the next round of public involvement. So for the railroad crossing and I-90 interchange focus area, so this area lacks pedestrian and bicycle amenities, which are limited by the narrow railroad underpass. The width of the railroad underpass, along with the geometry of the I-90 interchanges, limits sight distances, causing safety issues. So this is a really challenging area as we're limited by the existing railroad infrastructure and maintaining railroad operations during construction. So we've looked at a lot of different options, and the three that we've chosen to present have been determined to be the most feasible options. There are still challenges, feasibility challenges, but like I said, we think these are the three most feasible options. So the first option is 2 roundabouts, one at each I-90 interchange. The roundabouts improve safety and intersection operations while addressing the challenging geometry of the intersections. And then this option also includes a new railroad bridge that is a wider structure to accommodate bikes and pedestrians adjacent to the roadway. The second option is the Mount Jumbo shared use path. So with this option, we're really looking at kind of just avoiding and going around the existing railroad underpass. And this would connect East Missoula through to Van Buren with a connection to get downtown. This would either be connected in the MDT right-of-way or within the Mount Jumbo conservation easement. And then the design would need to mitigate impacts to Mount Jumbo within the conservation easement. And we're really looking at this option because we're really limited in what we can do with the railroad. And so we want to provide a second option for that connectivity and get some feedback on that. This option doesn't include any improvements to the I-90 interchanges. All right, and then option 3. So this option is 1 roundabout at the eastbound I-90 interchange. The eastbound I-90 interchange, there are more safety concerns associated with this interchange rather than the westbound. So we wanted to show one option for just improvements for this interchange. This option does not include any improvements for bicyclists and pedestrians between Easy Street and Hayden Street. And again, I want to stress that we're looking at potentially, combining different options. We're mixing and matching. So potentially we could do 1 roundabout with a new railroad bridge. If that is popular, maybe we don't need the second roundabout. So there's a lot of kind of those options of mixing and matching are available. Again, another survey to complete to give us the preferences. And then East Missoula. So East Missoula lacks curb and gutter sidewalk, as well as having numerous approaches in large areas of continuously paved property that are abutting the road that result in nearly continual access with few restrictions in place. This causes safety and stormwater issues. So to address those issues, we are proposing improvements that include curb and gutter and along the entire length of Highway 200 through East Missoula. This will address stormwater and drainage issues and delineate access to businesses and residences, as well as street connections. We've added a two-way left turn lane, and then additional driveway access is provided to existing businesses and residences. We're also working the design of the side streets and how they intersect with Highway 200 we're still kind of working through that, and it's kind of an ongoing conversation about how those can align to particularly deal with truck traffic in this area. And then again, asking for the preferences for bicycle and pedestrian amenities, as well as on-street parking type. So in this one, we have the option for a raised cycle track, as well as the on-street bike lane and shared use path. As far as pedestrian amenities, looking at the boulevard sidewalk, curbside sidewalk, and shared use path, and then on-street parking, either parallel parking, angle parking, or back-end angle parking. And the last focus area is Shawron. So Shawron experienced heavy use during the months and tubing season, and the existing parking area is not large enough to accommodate parking for all the users. So parking overflows along the shoulder of Highway 200, creating the issues. So we are really working on solutions that address the overflow parking that occur within the Highway 200 right. We've gotten some comments about maybe the management of the fishing access site should change, which all of kind of outside the scope of this project. So we are presenting two options that deal with safety improvements within the right of way. The first one is a protected on-street parking option. So we're adding parallel parking on the south side of the highway to the west of the existing parking area. The parking area is protected with a median to separate the pedestrians and the roadway. We're also including a variable speed limit zone with this option to reduce the speed limit during periods of high usage. And then we have a bus pullout. And with that, we want to provide an air compressor to inflate tubes, encouraging river users to ride the bus rather than drive through the river access. We think there's also that opportunity for a shuttle drop off that would really help with parking issues in this area. So this option does not require purchasing private property, but does require that the road would need to be lowered to mitigate slope impacts on private property. So it is a little bit more a big larger project than just adding the parking off to the side of the existing road. And then the second option is developing a new parking lot. It's about just under a quarter of a mile east of the existing parking area. And this parking lot would be located in existing right-of-way. This area has a very wide existing right-of-way. And then it would be connected to Shawron with a shared use path. And then again, surveys line for everybody to fill out. So that's really those are the alternatives, the key focus areas. I think at this point we can open it up. If anyone has comments or questions, let me know.
All right, thank you so much. Does anyone have a question or comment? a great comprehensive overview. Not seeing anyone raising their hands yet. All right, well, I guess we're all still absorbing it. But thank you so much. That's a lot. And I know we're all looking forward to seeing good things happen with those corridors. And hopefully folks take advantage of all the public comment opportunities you've been working to provide. I guess at this point, we'll also go ahead and open this section up to public comment, just as we did earlier, in case there's anyone watching from home who wants to go ahead and make a public comment. So as before, we will go ahead and put the comment screens on the comment call lines on this screen, if staff can take care of that for us. And I will once again read them for if we have anyone in the audience with vision difficulties. The phone lines to call are 1-267-831-0333 and 1-888-475-4499. The meeting ID is 960-049-3694, and we'll answer calls in order received. And we will go ahead and give that a minute to see if anybody calls in.
While we are waiting, this is Neil Miner. The website for the Highway 200 plan is really amazing. So thanks for putting that out, Kate, and the team. But I just looked at the Engage Missoula. We just did a public process too, and it's a great source that the city's been using. So maybe providing a link from Engage Missoula to the MPO website could be helpful for citizens looking to engage, and it might just be one more source of input.
Great, thanks, Neil. I think that's a good idea.
All right, I'm not seeing anyone in the waiting room with public comment. Once again, anybody on TTAC who with any last minute questions or comments for Kate before we move on to our next agenda item?
And my button isn't working either. I must have the same computer problems as Alan. Just a comment I would like to make is when you look at that backup parking, you really need to take into consideration the senior citizens in our community, because they cannot make the neck rotations that younger people can to get into those parking spots comfortably. So just want you to keep that in mind.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Lynn. Ben, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I guess my question is more for Neil. Since the new trail connection being shown along on the north side of the freeway it's a kind of a new piece added. What's your first blush at feasibility with that? And is that something that is doable and we should get excited about, or does Parks have some hesitation?
I think it's a harder than just a yes or no question, with just both the land management, the design, some site constraints, and then the conservation easement is also a big item. WGM reached out to us and Five Valleys Land Trust, and I think we gave similar options, as that we just need to review that conservation easement, and Five Valleys holds that, and just ensure that that is in line with what those conservation priorities are. I think it could get there either in a combination of on the property or in the MDT right of way. And I think there's some other hazards like rockfall and everything that we just need to look at and just make sure that that's feasible in that area. But I think it's a possibility. I think it just depends on final design and making sure it complies with that conservation easement.
All right, thank you so much. And thanks again, Kate. Oh, Karen's got her hand up. What's up, Karen?
Hi, We were looking at this yesterday. We kind of, when we had staff leaving and staff coming on board, and we kind of dropped the ball on the internal review piece. We're hoping that you took a look at the Missoula area land use element. It has quite a bit about mobility standards and expectations for the East Missoula area. I think we were a little surprised to see in some of the options unprotected bike lanes and to see so much on-street parking. But we'll take a closer look and hopefully you've got that on your list.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. I think those are all good comments and we'll take it in consideration during this round of public involvement and then we'll kind of regroup for the preferred alternative.
All right, well, great. Thank you again so much. We're going to go ahead and move on to our long-range transportation plan update from Aaron. Take it away.
Yeah, thanks. We also have Jennifer here again this month, which is great. So we just have a couple of brief things to go over. So over the last month, we've been working a lot on our call for projects and trying to get the project list updated and cleaned up and getting started. You know, we talked a little bit last month about the evaluation framework and how we're thinking of moving forward with the prioritization in the scenarios. And we've been getting some feedback and comments through various committees and presentations on our the revised goals and outcomes, and then trying to start developing some of those early programmatic recommendations that might feed into the non-infrastructure piece of our recommendations. And so I think today there's really just two sort of short tasks that I'll let Jennifer lead through. But one is to get general sign off on the revised goals. And we've made some changes based on the feedback we received from all of those committee meetings and public response. And then just kind of a quick overview of that initial programmatic recommendations as sort of a first start of what where we're going or what we're seeing as some opportunities. So I think with that, Jennifer, do you want to take it away? Your sound is not working. No. Well, I will start then. So while Jennifer's figuring out her sound, if we can get it working. So I'll start with the draft goals and outcomes. So if you remember last month we've the Nelson Nygaard team done a, oh, do you have sound? Was that you, Jennifer?
Did that work?
Yes.
And it doesn't sound like I'm 5 miles away.
There's a little bit of background noise, but not too bad. I think it works okay. Yeah.
Bizarre. You are doing a great job, Aaron. Sorry about that, everybody. I have used this with you all so many times. I didn't even think that there would be anything different this time around. So as Aaron was mentioning, just in terms of the final goals and desired outcomes, we have had the ability to talk with a lot of different groups over the last month and got some input from the public through an online survey as well. And so in your packet, you have just a short memo from me that provides a quick overview of the changes that we've made to each of the goals. And so I'll just give you a high-level summary of those, and then we are hoping that these match what you have shared and what you have heard from others, and that you'll be ready to approve these today for TPCC consideration later in the month. So at a high level, a lot of what we heard from folks was really wanting to focus in on the connection between land use and transportation even more clearly than we had in the initial set of goals. And so I would say the two goals where we have made the most changes are the second goal around sustainability, and I'll talk a little bit more about what those changes are, and then the fourth goal around connect and strengthen communities. There are a few things that changed in each, as I mentioned. And so, really with safety and promoting health, there was a big focus on recognizing that the connections, especially for lower income neighborhoods, is really a key piece when we think about who is most adversely impacted by transportation collisions and really thinking about health outcomes in the Missoula region. So added some language to the first goal to really address that, and also make a connection to the human aspect of walking and biking and increasing physical activity. I mentioned the second goal was one where we did make more substantial changes, and there are a few key things here. There was a suggestion from TPCC to focus in on community resilience as an important part of the climate and sustainability aspects of this goal. And so we've made some changes to be to be clear about climate change being at the forefront, to focus on carbon neutrality and make it even more apparent where Missoula is trying to go. And then broadened this goal to get at some of the other elements of transportation, including urban canopy and green stormwater infrastructure as really important pieces. There was feedback from folks that we were being a little bit narrow in terms of thinking only about natural and historic resources. And so we tried to broaden that a little bit in the desired outcomes and in the goal language. Relatively few comments on the third goal. The changes there are to be a little bit more active and also to make sure that we are not forgetting to acknowledge the fact that cars and single occupancy vehicles do play a role in the transportation system. And then again, I mentioned the fourth goal was one where we did have a lot of changes, and the focus here was being as clear as possible about connecting the long-range transportation plan to the land use plans that have been developed into Missoula's focus on inward growth, on creating complete communities, and really being clear about the types of services that we want to connect people to as well. So building in essential services, being articulate about affordable and senior housing being a key component, and really making all of those pieces apparent in this goal. And then for the last goal, we took the opportunity to reiterate the importance of mixed use development when we talk about supporting growth inward, and then added a desired outcome that was specifically around funding sources, recognizing that there certainly is not enough money. Many of the sources that we use to pay for transportation projects and programs can be inequitable, especially when we think about older adults on a fixed income or lower income folks. And so added a desired outcome there. So those are the major changes that we've made to the goals and desired outcomes. And so I think at this point, I would ask if folks have comments or questions about those or feel ready to move ahead and potentially approve them.
Great, thank you so much for that update. Do we have anybody who just has a comment out of hand? And then we will be asking for, I believe, a bit of an action item here to kind of give a consensus of, yes, these are great goals and outcomes at the end of this discussion. So if anybody has questions or comments, please raise your hand and let us know. All right, I'm not seeing any. I think we can go real quick and do our public comment thing again while folks consider if they want to make a comment before we go and move to a bit of a little action item here. So once again, if you'd like to comment on the item, we're putting the phone lines up. I will read them again. The phone lines to call in are 1-267-831-0333 and 1-888-475-4499. The meeting ID is 960-049-3694. We'll answer the calls in order received. So we'll go ahead and give that a minute to see if there's anybody watching who wishes to make a comment on the long-range transportation plan update.
And Sarah, maybe while we're waiting, related to the action item here, it's not it's not necessarily an action item officially adopting anything. That'll happen when the plan gets adopted. And so all of this is still, you know, there's still opportunity to refine and do work on these things, but we did want to get basically sign off from this committee and then from TPCC that we can move forward with these goals when we get into our developing our scenarios, our evaluation framework, and sort of all of the other work that's going to rely on that. So we have a lot to build on from these. And so we want to have this touch point to say, yeah, they're good, basically, you know, good to go for those next steps in the plan.
That's great. Could you really quick, Aaron, type up what that preferred action would be so we can read it and not try to say back what everything you just said, which was great. And in the meantime, Corey, I see your hand is raised.
Yes. So my question is, I guess, how do I phrase it? You know, a lot of things that we started into prior to this COVID-19 pandemic seem to have kind of stalled, or there's so much unknown behind it. What are your concerns about us, about proceeding and finishing this plan? I mean, I guess maybe one of my concerns is that it will be a plan that sits, because we just don't have the ability to do anything for who knows how long.
So Corey, this is Jennifer, and I mean, I think it's a fair concern about anything that is happening right now, but I think what I would suggest, and what we have been seeing in other places, is that this type of planning effort, one that looks to the future and that really clearly articulates what the priorities are, is probably more important now than ever, because we know we are going to be in a time of scarcity. We know we are going to be in a time of limited resources. And so having that really clear articulation of what needs to come first means that you're ready, whatever the resources and whatever the capacity might be. And I think really developing a plan that is grounded in values and in goals that are tied to those values means that it will stand the test of time, because your values shouldn't change even as conditions change. Other things will change, but I do think that this kind of long range and strategic planning effort is the right thing to be doing right now.
Do you think any of the goals or any of the ways that we have traditionally gone about doing things are going to be affected or change in the way that we need to approach? You know, now that we've had a whole 3 months or whatever, 4 months, I don't even know how long it's been, of experience behind this. I'm just trying to crystal ball again.
Yeah, I mean, I think that sort of what I see is that the fifth goal around maintaining assets and investing strategically, we developed that goal in the time of COVID even, and we were starting to think about the fact that we needed to be smart about resources. We needed to be thinking about lower cost and high impact projects, and really focusing in on the fact that there likely would be less capacity, both resource-wise and person-wise, to deliver things. And so that goal to me is one that does really speak to the fact that transportation has an opportunity to spur economic recovery, to really be used in a way that supports the community as things continue to change. So I think that one definitely becomes even more important as things continue to unfold in the way that we've seen. And then also, I think that safety continues to be very, very important. One of the things that we have seen as there are fewer people on the roads is that vehicle speeds are going up. We're seeing crashes go up in a lot of places. And so I think it is really important to kind of double down on a couple of those goals at this point.
Great, thank you so much. Aaron, did you have a chance? Oh, I see we have somebody in chat.
Yeah, I just included in the chat.
Great.
It's the easiest way to sort of get it out there. Yeah, essentially I guess my recommended motion from staff level is that you all recommend TPCC approve the draft goals and outcomes as presented by staff and the consultants today, or as you want to modify them and to be used in the development of the project prioritization and the plan evaluation framework. So those are sort of the next steps in the plan.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Aaron. We are bumping up to 11:30, so let's go ahead and move along. Can I get a motion from anybody on this recommending the TPCC approve these draft goals as presented?
I'd make that motion.
I'll
Thank you.
second it.
Second from Lynn. Great. Can I get a voice vote? All in favor, say aye.
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 All right. Any opposed? Same sign, or nay, or whatever you want to do. And any abstain? All right. Motion carries. Thank you so much. And Jennifer, I just want to say thank you to all the work you guys are doing on the LRTP. It's been a great thing to be a part of as we closer and closer. It's been a weird time to be doing it. So I appreciate everything you've put into it. Let's go ahead and go on. I believe, are we on to announcements and closing comments? Do we have any?
I guess I would just have one comment kind of related to the LRTP update that we just don't have time for. Is we do have that programmatic, initial programmatic elements memo from Jennifer. So take a look at that. And if you have questions or feedback, we'll come back to it next month and continue to highlight some of those as we develop recommendations in the long range plan. But I did want to just note that that is there in a couple of places in the agenda, and it might. I think there's some opportunities there for as we're developing the UPWP. So when you're thinking about those projects, think about that memo and opportunities that might come up related to those different programs.
And Aaron, this is Jennifer. I think the only piece I would add to that is that I do think that memo speaks to a lot of what Corey was just asking about as well, because we have started to think about the programmatic recommendations maybe a little bit differently and what you all might want to choose to advance sooner rather than later because of COVID. So as you review it, maybe think about that lens as well.
Great, thank you so much. Are there any other announcements or closing comments?
Have a safe 4th of July.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you all for being here for this meeting. I'm going to go ahead and adjourn us. And yeah, have a great holiday, folks.
Thanks all.
Everybody too. Thank you.